So today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite ways to target large fish on a fly rod. It's flies that I use pretty much for every species of fish. You know, I catch smallmouth this way, I catch, large browns this way, I've caught bull trout in Canada this way. Anywhere I go, I pretty much always have some of these in my arsenal, always in my fly box, and they almost always work for me. Basically, dead drifting white jigs. They call this like a shad kill pattern. If you fish the White River in Arkansas, which is my home water, it's shad kill season when you go throw large white jigs under indicators. You can fish with either like a white meat whistle, white marabou jig, white and gray is a good pattern, a balanced leech, like a Jighead bunny leech. Any of those things work fine for what we're doing. Setup wise, we're going to be fishing with an 8-weight, larger indicator, 8 to 12 pound tippet, and then a white jig fly. I don't know if you can see there. The reason I like fishing with jig heads is a jig rides hook up. So it's less likely to snag on the bottom, it bounces around on a rock bottom better. When you do get a fish and you set the hook, you're generally going to be hooking them in the top of the mouth or in the side of the top of the mouth, which I think you can steer fish better that way and you're less likely to throw them. Basically what you are emulating doing this is like a shad pattern or a stunned fish or a dead bait fish just kind of bouncing along the bottom. It could emulate a flesh fly, or flesh, should I say. Just like when you're salmon fishing, you have salmon rotting in the water, so there's a lot of skin in the water. So it's basically just like a piece of white, could be a bait fish, could be flesh, just drifting down, stunned. I like to cast upstream a little bit, throw in an upstream mend to get my fly below my indicator, and then I'll let it drift back to me and I'll give it a little wiggle, every 10 or so foot to keep it off the bottom. If I feel like I'm hitting the bottom, I might bounce it occasionally just to keep it from snagging. But being a jig hook, you shouldn't have to worry about that. Ultimately, if you have an area that you think there's a brown trout or a nice fish, you present this to where it's drifting a few foot, to the side of them, and they'll swim over and grab it. So on a recent trip to Utah, I took my camera and fished with my buddy Jake Smith. He is a fly fishing guide in Ogden, veteran guide for the Salt Lake City area. He's been doing it for at least 15 years. Super awesome guy, and he's been extremely hospitable to me over the years. So every time I go to Utah, I always make a point to go fish with Jake. Most of the time I go to Utah, it's just to go fish with Jake. So we went to a river that he knew, a small stream, and we did this exact thing, just dead drifted bait fish patterns, dead drifted white jigs, and put a bunch of good fish on board. So here you'll see Jake fishing a long, slow pool. Now with this, it's less important to worry about your mends. A little bit of slack in your line doesn't matter because this is such a large hook and these fish are generally larger that are eating it, so you have more than a millisecond to set the hook. It's a pretty forgiving way to fish. If you're not super quick or if you've got a bow in your line, it doesn't seem to matter as much. What's cool about dead drifting these large white jigs is that it promises a lot of protein for the fish. So when it comes time for them to swim 3 foot over to eat a size 20 midge versus swim 3 foot over to eat a very large piece of bait fish, they're generally going to take the bait fish because it's worth the effort for them. It's absolutely worth it, especially in the winter months. So this is a great way to fish in high water. If you're going to a creek and it's blown out or just a little bigger than you're used to, that means the fish are going to be eating more aggressively, they're going to be pushed more into the sides, and they're not going to pass up that kind of protein in those scenarios. I went to Mossy Creek in Virginia, and it's a very technical stream, I was told, really hard place to fish, and we got there and it was blown out. It was big, it was like greenish brown, people told me it was unfishable. I dead drifted white jigs through it, and I think I had 11 or 12 browns in like an hour in a creek that's supposed to be really hard to catch fish. I don't think I would have done well there had it been low water because the fish are supposed to be too spooky. Anytime I roll up to a trout stream and I see that the water is higher than it's supposed to be or tinted and people are bummed, to me that means it's time to throw white jigs, and it almost always works for me. Give it a shot. If you do and you found this video helpful and you go give this a shot and it works for you, please let me know. Please comment. Feel free to email me. Click subscribe if this was helpful, and then, yeah, have a good day. Tight lines.